back.
This meeting is being recorded.
We're back. So for the fantastic conversation, I mean, very, very good insights. So I'm just going to, like I said, I'm just going to keep drawing parallels. And for part two of this conversation, I just wanted to, what's your experience with other sports? I mean, like you said, it's not just football. You also dabbled in other sports also. Just talk to us about that.
Yeah, I was very privileged to be invited to work in a public school here in Japan as a PE teacher. So I worked there for 7 years. It was a really unique situation because there are no, you have foreign teachers working in Japan, but they are generally English teachers, assistant language teachers, they're called. And I was invited off the back of my UNESCO links to work as a PE teacher. So that gave me an insight into a lot of the general sports outlook here in Japan, because it can be quite different, especially PE. Like say for example, you have to teach kendo and judo and those type of sports which are not common in different countries. But also the structure of Japanese schooling and the way in which students but the school I worked in was at junior high school age, so 13 to 15. So it gave me an insight into how those schools are run and the curriculum, and not just in PE and sports itself, but in different areas too. So I was really lucky to be able to do that job. Really enjoyed it. I learned so much about it. I worked with some amazing PE teachers. One of the PE teachers now has actually gone on to be ahead of a prefectural, Nagano prefecture here in Japan. He's gone on to be the head of sports development in Nagano prefecture.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "It should be you, not me." And I was like, what? But yeah, it was a nice compliment from him, but he's just started that job now, so I hope he's doing well. But yeah, I was very lucky to be able to work in that environment, which is again unusual. But one of the main things I learned is the structures around sports in school. And so you have PE, but you also have the each sports club. So if I can just go into detail how the sports clubs are run in Japan. When you get to junior high school, so 13-year-old, first grade, you choose a sport or you choose a different activity. It could be music, like in a brass band, or art, or something different to sports. But I'd say 70% of students choose a sport. So that within the school I worked in, the sports were soccer, baseball is huge. Also basketball is very popular now in Japan. And then on top of that, you have like individual sports like tennis, table tennis, and athletics, all the different what would you say, genres of athletics. And when you choose that club, you're expected to play in that club and only that club all the way up until the end of that school. So it becomes you invest your time and you invest your effort into that one discipline. So whether it's soccer or baseball or whatever, you invest your time and effort into that. And the teachers also invest a lot of time and effort into that too. So again, similar to the conversation we were having earlier about my academy, spending a lot of time at the grounds, it's the same when you get to school. So on a Saturday and Sundays, the teachers and the coaches for the club activities, they're at the schools all day too. So the schools are like the center for like community sports. However, if you're kind of excelling beyond that level, you will then go on to join a higher level club team, and that will usually entail paying a fee. It's not on site at the school; it could be further away. pretty similar to in Europe, So in general, your general level is school and community based at junior high school level. But for any sports, not just soccer, if you're like progressing through the ranks and kind of showing a lot of potential, then you're expected to play for a higher level team too. So I learned a lot from that time as a school teacher.
Yeah, and I should tell you, in India, right? And when I was growing up, I sorry to say this, PE teachers were the butt of all jokes in India, right? Because they're the ones who really come when the principal wants to enforce discipline. They're the ones that they send down, go straighten out the kids, right? They're the ones, yeah, they're the ones who do it. And I mean, we had only two sessions in a week, like 240.
Really?
Yeah, 240-minute sessions. That's it. So PE period or PE time is the only time. So essentially we use it as a break from education. We don't look at it as education. We look at it as, we finally have a break today. So
Really?
we don't. So I used to play football in that amount of time, but a lot of kids would just be happy to have that 40-minute break. So that's a cultural difference, right? And that's a very good indicator that we aren't really a sporting culture nation or a fitness obsessed nation. Like, for example, when I traveled to Germany to watch the likes of Dortmund, Schalke, Cologne, right? And fantastic atmosphere. Like, I mean, absolutely bonkers, right? 50,000 people watching teams, even in Bundesliga too, right? I saw that there was a culture of fitness that just permeated through, right? 20% of the country, Germany, for example, has been involved in football at one level or the other. They've played it at one level or the other. That's fantastic numbers, I think. But beyond the numbers, also, like I said, we need to have a culture, we need to have a focus, which we don't have, right? Because like you mentioned, it seems it's a very well thought out structure, which we don't have. For example, athletics, right? We pick up athletics very late. I've seen people start racing like the sprints and stuff like that at 15 maybe, and I feel like by that time all of your most of your development is over, right, by the 15. But one of the aspects I want to touch on is that, and Japan does this really well, along with Spain's the only other country I can think that does this really well. How does it ensure gender parity? And does your academy also have like a women's setup? I wanted to just deep dive into this.
Yeah, actually, when you're in the junior stage, so under 12s downwards here in Japan, girls and boys are just completely mixed. So the girls playing I'd say the tournaments are tournaments, and you can put a full girls team in that tournament, or you can have a mix of boys and girls, or it might just be boys only, which I think is fantastic. And it also develops the girls really well. And a lot of the time, the girls are better than the boys. They're stronger. They understand the game a lot more. You see a lot of cases where the girls really excel at that age group. And when they get a little bit older, the speed aspect of it is difficult for girls to empower maybe. So when they get to the junior youth stage and the youth stage here, then that's when you will have girls only teams. But it is also possible for girls to join a school team. So that's not impossible. My daughter actually plays for her school team, she's now 13, so she just started the junior youth stage, and she wanted to play for the school team, which is a mix of boys and girls. There are 2 girls and all the rest of them are boys, and they're comfortable in playing that. It isn't like a strange thing for the girls to be playing with the boys. Nobody really kind of batters an eyelid at it. They all think it's fine. And my academy, we have a girls only team, actually, a girls only training session, actually, not a team. So every Friday on an evening, it's girls specific, and it's really nice. It's a really nice environment. I'm glad we invested the time into it. And also as part of that, we allow the the parents to come. So the mums will also turn up. So it's a mix of adults right down to kindergarten level. And it's a completely different feeling. We're on the same ground. So at the same time, we'll have different training sessions going on. But that feeling in that training session is really nice. It's girls with girls, and they all kind of seem to enjoy and feel comfortable within that environment too. Yeah, I think Japan I think the biggest compliment I can give to Japan in respect to sports and like kind of gender equality is that they haven't had to change anything recently to become gender equal. It was just always there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So in the 16 years I've been here, I've coached a lot of different girls teams. I actually coached I was a head coach at which is now a professional team in the Nadeshiko League, they call it in Japan, which is the kind of like the championship. They've got the Premier League, which is the Wii League, which only started last year. It's in the second season this year. Then below that is the Nadeshiko League, which used to be the top league. So it's really similar to the Premier League and Championship. And that team are playing in the Nadeshiko League. So I was head coach there for 4 years, from 2013. And that was a really big learning curve, learning experience. It was really good. We actually had a player who we developed, and she went on to play for Japan. She got 10 caps for Japan. That was an amazing story, maybe for another time, because it's quite a long story. But yeah, she excelled, and she went off to play at different teams, and she's actually now back playing for that team. They're called White Star Gunma, and they play in the Nadeshiko League. And that was a really good learning curve for me too, because at the time it was still a small club with aspirations to become a professional ladies team. And my job was to build from the bottom. So there was a head coach. There was a head coach of the team. There was an overall general manager, and he was also like they call it the kantoku here in Japan. He was the kantoku of the team, and I was the head coach and also the development officer. So I put a lot of different structures in place and kind of did a lot of the development from the younger age groups up. And we built a sports club, and on the back of the sports club, it started to build from the bottom, and that's how they've managed to go on now to become a professional team. And that's a ladies team, and the ladies soccer, Japan won the World Cup in 2011.
Yeah.
Just after the big earthquake here. It was huge. That was huge because the earthquake was, I don't know if you remember, the earthquake and the tsunami over here was in March, and they won the World Cup to 2011, and it was a real big morale booster for the nation at the time. And that was such good timing, but also it was kind of a showcase it was kind of a kick up the bum for the men's team too, saying, listen, if the women can win the World Cup and do this, then the men's team can also. So I think it was inspiration for the men's team, or not just the men's team, but the whole structure, to say, yeah, we can do this too. And I think that's where I think about India, and I think India just needs one inspirational story, and I think a lot of things can change. I'm not an expert in Indian football or Indian culture, but if I compare it to the Japanese stuff, which I'm an expert in Japanese youth sport, I think the inspiration has been as important as different aspects too. So the one player, so say for example Nakata, who played for Roma and all these major teams in Italy, and then also went on to different countries. And think about Nakamura Shunsuke, who played for Celtic, and then Kagawa.
Inamoto, yeah.
Inamoto, yeah. Those players, they opened the door for this generation now. But there was only a handful of those players. We can name them. Whereas now, there is an abundance of players playing.
60 players playing in Europe, right? Over 60 players playing in Europe from Japan. That's crazy.
Yeah, and within those 60 players, a lot of them playing in the Champions League. I don't know if you knew this, but the Japanese Football Association, when Alberto Zaccaroni was the head coach of the national team, he specifically demanded, actually, it was quite forthright. He demanded that the players played, all of his players. He wanted all of his players to play in Europe. All of the players in the national team. If they were playing in the J League, only in the worst case scenario they wanted to pick them. But he says no, they all have to be playing in Europe. And on the back of that, the JFA also made a goal that they wanted 40 players. I don't know the numbers perfectly, but I think it was 40 players playing season on season in the European Champions League. And they set a time limit for that, and they achieved it. They're just playing in the Champions League, but they're also excelling. I know Mitoma doesn't play in the Champions League, but he is one of the best players in the Premier League this season, right? So it's like setting goals, but the inspiration from the Nakatas and the Shunsuke Nakamuras and Yunamotos, that's opened the door for this generation.
I agree with you. India needs its own hero story, right? And I think because the men's section is so crowded, India's hero story will come in the women's section. So currently we have 0 men's players playing abroad, but we have 5 women playing abroad, and out of those 4 playing in Europe, right? And we just had the first Indian player, men or women, and it was a lady who won European League title in Cyprus, right? And the Cyprus women's division is much more competitive than the men's division. So, I mean, as somebody who's also coached an all-girls team, I 100% agree that, there has to be gender parity. For example, US brought about gender parity in sports by its chapter 9, addendum to the constitution that it brought about, I think about 1972, right, where it said that you can't distinguish when it comes to education, right, and that included sports education under its ambit, and that set about a domination of 30 years for the US women's team. And Japan, as you rightly said, are always contenders for the women's World Cup. For the men's, they're now being seen as a powerhouse, but for the women, they've been contenders for last this thing. And I'm glad to hear that your daughter also plays football. I don't know if she's a Mana Iwabuchi fan or or one of those, but I mean the Japanese.
She likes. Unfortunately, I'm a Liverpool supporter, but she likes Yui Hasegawa. She plays for Man City.
Yeah.
And this year we were back in the UK for a short period of time at the beginning of this year, and we went to Man City's ladies to watch Yui play. And for one, she was really technically brilliant. And it also goes to show that she's small, she's tender, she's light, but she controls the game. There's a place in any football for any type of player. That's another point I'd like to make. The Japanese, when I first came to Japan, there was a little bit of excuses on the media, especially in the media, not so much in teams and in development, but there was a little bit of an excuse that all of the players are huge, they're all big, we can't compete physically. And that excuse is gone now, mainly due to the fact that they've seen Spain or Argentina or these players who don't have huge players. They don't have, like tall or, physically strong players, but you can form a plan around the players you've got. And Hasegawa Yui is a huge, she's a really important player for that Man City team, and she really controls the game. Yeah. But yeah, my daughter, she plays, and she really loved playing at the junior stage, and she's gone on now to play at the junior U stage too. And touching up on what you said about America, I think that's a really similar situation to America. It's similar when you compare America to Japan, in the fact that girls and boys play together from a young age, but when the time is right, they branch out to go on to girl specific or boy specific teams. And I don't know is that the same in India? Do they play together or?
So in India, girls don't even start playing till they're 13, 14. So if the problem statement for the boys is that they start playing at 9, 10, the girls don't even touch of football since in the, and which is why you still have these antiquated methods of scouting. For example, I mean, for this under 17 World Cup, we were hosts, and I think the scout from the All India Federation came, and he looked at three of my girls, and he said, "Oh, you know, these girls are too small. Why don't you come back when you're taller?" And I don't know what they expect of 14-year-olds. I mean, it's not WWE where they're going to be 6 feet tall and have a finishing move, right? It's not that. It's not wrestling, right? So I said, why don't you focus on what they can do with the ball instead of what they can't do, right? The scout asked them all sorts of inane questions. How tall is your dad? How tall is your grandfather? How tall can you grow? And it was very shocking to me. It seemed like it did not have a connect with sports science or football understanding at all. Yeah.
Again, though, I've explained a lot over the years to a lot of Japanese people because, like I said, there was a bit of an excuse that we're not big enough, we can't compete physically. And I said, the number one reason why football is the most popular sport in the world is because it's really easy to play, as in you only need one ball. You can put two bottles down as posts, or jumpers or anything down as posts. You just need one ball. Sometimes you don't even need a ball. You can play around with a plastic bottle, right? But anyway, one ball. And then also is because anybody can play it. If you think about the players like Ibrahimovic, he's 190 centimeters, right? If you think about Messi, he's 170 centimeters. There's 20 centimeters between them. Messi is quite well built. But you look at Peter Crouch from England, he's tall and thin, and there's so many different body types who can play football that you can't pigeonhole them into any type of player. It's not decided on your body size or your speed, not just your speed or not just your power. It's decided on many different factors, your football intelligence, your quick thinking, your overall knowledge of the game. But on top of that, some players have the assets of having speed or having a skill or having great vision. But every player, that's why football is the number one sport in the world, because anybody can play it at any time, anywhere. And that's why you see countries, look at I think Northern Africa, like Tunisia, Egypt and Algeria, Morocco, those countries are excelling because of that factor. They're quite, in general, look at Salah, Mahrez, those type of players. They're not huge. They're not all of them are quick.
Technically, they're brilliant on the ball, right? They're just
very good. Very good.
This is one with the ball. They're not separate entities at all when they have the ball, right?
No, I see the Northern African countries as a similar situation to Japan. Their progression has been huge, but also there's no excuse. Anybody can play anywhere at any time. You just need a ball. And that's where I think India is at the moment, where anybody find an environment where anybody can play at any time and allow them to invest their own time into playing and encourage them to invest their own time into playing. And the more they play from a young age, and the more they understand the game from a young age, the better and better the individuals will get. If the individuals get better, then the group gets better. If the group gets better, then it becomes a nice cycle. It's an upward cycle. Yeah. So India also, I've got loads of ideas.
Go on.
But one thing which I can compare the Japanese structure or the Japanese kind of experience to India is that 30 years ago, Japan was like a blank canvas. And I think that allows for huge potential. Sometimes you can look at it in a negative light and think we don't have anything. But I think if you look at it in a positive light and think, wow, because we don't have anything on our canvas yet, it's up to us. We can influence what happens in the future. And I compare Japan to Europe sometimes, and I think that it's actually better because it isn't as traditional. So when I was younger in England, we played our league matches week in, week out, and the cup matches came, and it's really good. The development's obviously amazing in places like England and Spain, but also you can manipulate those schedules easily because they're so traditional. Whereas in Japan, if something doesn't seem right, you can change it because it's still new. It isn't as traditional. It isn't as it hasn't got as much historic value or emotional value. So that's where I think that's a huge potential for India, is that football's still very young. So there isn't a lot of history and tradition behind it. So it is easily changeable, in my opinion, until you find the right structure. I don't know if you agree or not.
I mean, a slight historical disagreement, because India used to be a powerhouse in football, Asian football, until the 70s and 80s. India, in fact, has 2 gold medals at the Asian Games for football, right?
Really?
Yeah, 1951, 1962. India, when went to play France at the 1948 Olympics, lost 2-1, and that too only because we missed 2 penalties, right? So in India used to be known as the Brazil of Asia back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. But we stopped.
What
We stopped playing. We stopped, as in the players primarily used to play all year round, and that stopped. That stopped all of a sudden, right? The players used to get government jobs. The players used to have job security. The players used to have a lot of. They used to be rock stars, right? That just stopped after. What do you say? I mean, we didn't develop along with the times. We didn't keep up with the latest scientific findings in football, and a lot of our football isn't always science driven. That's my major grouse. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
we haven't kept up the times. A lot of Indian club teams still play antiquated 4-4-2 systems, right? So I'm sure you can innovate within that space as well, but we just need a lot more research. We need to understand, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to build only top bottom, and that's what's led to the downfall of Indian football.
So there isn't that balance like here in Japan where
No.
you've got top to bottom to top and they meet in the
Yeah,
middle.
I also don't believe in the trickle down economics of football. It doesn't work in India or anywhere else for that matter, right? It's just that if you put money in the top, it's not going to essentially reach the community. And the
No.
biggest problem is that I feel that community hyperlocal play spaces are disappearing, right? For example, as an adult, if I have to book a ground and for my friends to play with, we have to pay somewhere in the range of $40 or 40 pounds per hour, right? And that, as adults, we can afford it. We can split as £3 per
Yeah.
day. But how does a 11-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 6-year-old do that? They cannot do that, right? So, and
Possible. And
yeah,
if you were, say for example, if you had the idea to start a team and you have to pay those costs just to get the ground, and then that's already a cost before you even start. If those grounds were readily available for teams to be able to use quite regularly and at a low cost, then there'll be more teams.
India has 96 grounds which have a capacity of 20,000 people or more, by the way, right? But those are not open to the public. Those are not open to public because you might have to pay, and for in India, 1,50,000 rupees or 1,500-1,600 pounds per day. It's a lot of money to shell out. I mean, it's a lot of money to shell out. So I think those facilities need to be democratized. I think that's the but before we go, any last thoughts? Because like I said, our listeners, I think a lot of minds will open, a lot of ideas, because in India, a lot of CEOs, CFOs, a lot of these big people in football watch Injury Time. It's a I mean, it's still a burgeoning crowd for in Indian football, but I mean, the lot of quality listeners who have their own academies and all that. So if you have any last thoughts, I mean, please feel free to share.
Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to, well, I kind of introduced myself, but when it comes to Japanese sports and especially football, there isn't a foreign person in Japan, I'm confident to say this, who has as much knowledge around the background and development as myself. And that's kind of because of the experience I've had here. And I think that's one of the reasons why I can give quite a good insight into how Japan's developed. I've been here long enough. The J League is 30 years old this year, and I've been here for 16 years. So I've been here for more than half of that period. And I've seen the development in front of my eyes. And personally, even when I first got here and when I first started my own academy, I didn't foresee Japan beating Germany and Spain. And even as a really positive person that I am, I couldn't see that happening, but it has. And I think it's a good general reflection of what's going on over here. And that's where, like right now, I've been here for 16 years, and my academy, I have staff and coaches I run the academy, but they can also do it for me and run it, and they understand the environment I've put in place. And I'm like now at the stage in my life where I'm ready to help other places too, help other countries, and maybe India, for example, or other. I've had interest from Indonesia, and there's some interest from Australia and Singapore. But I'm at the point now where I'd love to kind of pass on the knowledge I've gained here and in the other countries I've been to, and hopefully be able to help another country be as proud as Japan were after this World Cup. And the thing is, with Japan, it's not perfect. There's still a lot of work to do here too. But I think up until now, the progress has been so huge that they can feel pride and feel a good sense of accomplishment. And I think that sense of accomplishment as a country is so rewarding that it encompasses people beyond football. So you can speak to older ladies who have no interest in football, or older men, and they're so proud of their national team. And if I can go on to help another country to feel that same pride, then I think that would be really rewarding. So if there's anybody who's interested in getting in touch with me, or getting in touch just in general to ask about anything to do with Japanese sports or anything beyond that, then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn is probably the best place to find us. My academy is on Instagram. I don't know if you've got notes in the podcast or anything. I can give you the information.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm like I say, I'm kind of excited for the next stage of my career too. Yeah. But I'm also kind of willing to find the right path to help out another nation too. But to kind of wrap it up with Japan, if I can put it in a nutshell, I've kind of mentioned it in the podcast so far. Time, it's the balance between monetary investment and time investment is huge. So it can't all be money. Yeah. That doesn't just work. It's got to be, it's got to have such a good plan. And then within that plan, people have got to realize that if you put the time in, the more effort you put in, the time you put in will show you the rewards which you get at the other end of it. And that's something which I've learned a lot from being here in Japan. And the fact that they've been able to catch up with a lot of the rest of the world has been on the back of the investment in infrastructure, in equipment, in tournaments, and all of that, but also the investment in time too.
On that note, I think it's been fantastic to have you on the pod, Tom. I think a lot of insights, and for sure, anyone who wants to get in touch, we at Injury Time definitely point them towards you. And thank you for coming on the pod and really demystifying a lot of stuff. Really opening our eyes up. what we can do better. Before we go, you can like, share, and subscribe to us on Injury Time. We are on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We're not as huge on Instagram, but we're very popular on Twitter and YouTube, and on Spotify as well. So yeah, and we'll be sharing this in a week or two. We'll make some basic edits to this, and yes, and thank you again for being on our show. It was a pleasure hosting you, and yes, hopefully we will collab with you. Indian football will collab with you in the near future. Thank you.